The whole mess started on a breezy Saturday morning in Maple Ridge, Oregon, inside a gorgeous two-story house that looked like the kind of place real estate agents describe using words like charming, inviting, and priced way above your budget. But this house was in someone's budget. Specifically, Ethan Walsh's. A 34-year-old software engineer who had spent half his life saving, investing, and budgeting like a man terrified of ever returning to Remenodless Fordner territory. Ethan wasn't flashy. He didn't own sports cars, designer sneakers, or a gaming setup that cost more than a small car. The man bought off-brand cereal even after getting a raise. But he was stable, responsible, and somehow still deeply in love with his longtime girlfriend, Lena Brooks, a graphic designer turned influencer whose relationship with money could best be described as romantically distant. When Ethan bought the house, a cool one. $2 million modern farmhouse with vaulted ceilings, oak floors, and a backyard that begged for summer barbecue. She did it by himself. His savings, his mortgage, his credit, his future on the line. Lena was supportive verbally. Financially, she contributed exactly $0.00, but assured him she would help decorate. A sentence that retrospectively should have been a red flag. For the first week, things were calm. They unpacked boxes, argued about where the couch should go, and pretended adulthood wasn't as exhausting as it actually is. But then came the visit. The visit. Enter the Brooks women. Martha, Lena's mother, sharp tongue, sharper opinions, and permanently convinced she was right. And Jenna, Lena's older sister, queen of unsolicited advice, chronic boundary ignorer, and self-proclaimed relationship expert despite having survived only 3 months of her last situationship. They walked into the house with the energy of mall cops searching for shoplifters. Martha looked around, inspecting the walls, the furniture, the decor, as if she were flipping a house on HGTV and had already decided Ethan had terrible taste. Well, Martha announced dramatically, "This place is adequate." Ethan blinked. Thanks?" Jenna smirked. "Kinda big for just one name on the deed, don't you think?" And there it was. The grenade. The spark that would ignite the dumpster fire. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean, just one name?" Martha crossed her arms like a prosecutor presenting Exhibit A. "Well, darling, if this home is meant for both of you, Lena's name should be on the deed. Otherwise, how is she supposed to feel secure?" Lena stood beside her mother and nodded weakly, like someone who wasn't entirely sure what she was nodding about. Ethan took a breath. "Lena and I already discussed this. Since I paid for the house and took the mortgage alone, it made sense to keep it in my name for now. Once we're married, we can revisit it." Jenna scoffed. "Marriage? That could take years. You're telling me you're making her wait for basic commitment?" And thus began the psychological warfare. Martha leaned forward with the subtlety of a speeding train. A man who truly loves a woman does not hesitate to share assets. Ethan forced a smile. A man who truly loves a woman also doesn't want to make irresponsible financial decisions. Jenna rolled her eyes, so hard they nearly left orbit. "Wow. So you don't trust her?" Lena looked at him, then really looked. Her eyes weren't angry, but uncertain. And uncertainty scared Ethan more than anger ever would. After they left, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like she'd misplaced her entire personality somewhere between the doorway and her mother's expectations. "My mom says if you don't put me on the deed," she said softly, "it means you don't trust me." Ethan rubbed his temples. "I do trust you. This isn't about trust. It's about legality and timing." But she hesitated. "Why wait?" "Because nothing is guaranteed," he said quietly. "Because relationships take work. Because marriage changes legal rights. And because if God forbid something happened between us, I'd lose half of something I spent my whole life building." Lena didn't yell, didn't get defensive. She just whispered, "So you're planning for us to break up?" "No," Ethan replied quickly. "I'm planning for the possibility of life being unpredictable. But once a seed of doubt is planted, especially by family, it grows fast." Over the next week, something shifted in Lena. She wasn't cruel or distant, just different. More quiet, more distracted, more evaluative. She started referring to the house in strange new terms. Our kitchen, our backyard, My office. Ethan tried not to read into it. He failed. One night, while he was cleaning up after dinner, he found Lena scrolling Zillow and Pinterest boards labeled future home upgrades. On her screen were designs involving tearing down walls, replacing floors, and remodeling the master bathroom into a spa-like oasis. A babe? He asked. Those are expensive projects. They're investments, she said, repeating her mother's exact phrasing from days earlier. For our home. Ethan paused.
Oh.
Our home. Lena didn't catch the sarcasm. He walked into the study later that night and found his deed file open.
Papers displaced.
Folders shifted.
Not catastrophic.
But not accidental either. The next morning, when he confronted her gently, Lena denied it. He let it go, but something inside him cracked. Meanwhile, Martha and Jenna intensified their campaign. Daily texts, late-night voice messages, articles about relationship trust and female financial vulnerability. They acted like Ethan was depriving Lena of oxygen instead of protecting legally acquired property. One afternoon, Lena finally snapped. "This house is supposed to be ours," she said. "You're making everything so hard." "I'm trying to be smart," Ethan replied. "You're asking me to put you on a deed worth more than everything I've saved in my entire adult life. Why is waiting until marriage such a problem?" Lena folded her arms. "Maybe because you don't want to marry me. That is not what this is." "Then prove it." That sentence hit like a truck. Because there it was. The manipulation. The emotional arm twist he never thought he'd hear from her. Ethan went to see his oldest friend, Marcus, a financial planner who had seen more couples destroy themselves over money than over infidelity. Marcus listened patiently, drank half a beer, and said,
"Dude,
if you put her on that deed, you're an idiot." Ethan sighed. "That's harsh." "It's realistic," Marcus countered. "If she walks away in 6 months, she gets half." Half, man. $500,000. You'd basically be handing her a winning lottery ticket. Ethan swallowed. "But what if I lose her?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "If you lose someone because you refuse to give away half your net worth, then you didn't lose a partner. You dodged a lawsuit." Ethan stared at the floor. Marcus softened. "Look, I'm not saying she's using you. But I am saying that letting her mother dictate your relationship is a disaster waiting to happen. Set boundaries now or drown later." But drowning was already happening. Because 2 days later, Lena stood in the living room and said the words that made Ethan's stomach drop. "My mom is coming tomorrow. She wants to talk to you."
Oh.
Fantastic. A performance review with the woman who thought he was one missed signature away from being a criminal. Ethan didn't sleep that night. And when morning came, he wasn't ready. He would never have been ready. But that was coming next. The confrontation that would blast everything open. The next morning arrived with an atmosphere so tense it felt like the house itself had opinions. Ethan woke up early, brewed coffee strong enough to resurrect the dead, and mentally prepared himself for Martha Brooks, the human embodiment of a Yelp review, coming over to talk. At exactly 11 a.m., the doorbell rang.
Once.
Loudly. With the precision of someone who rings doorbells aggressively on principle. Ethan opened the door to find Martha already mid-roll. "Good," she said without greeting. "You're awake. Let's make this quick." She brushed past him like she owned the place, ironic, given the entire argument happening, her perfume leaving behind a trail of floral hostility. Lena followed behind her, looking as if she might evaporate from stress at any moment. They all sat in the living room. Ethan on one couch. Martha and Lena on the other. Jenna, thankfully, did not attend. Probably busy giving terrible advice to someone else. Martha crossed her legs and folded her hands like she was presiding over a disciplinary hearing. "Let's cut to the chase," she began. "This house? It feels wrong. It feels deceitful. And my daughter deserves better." Ethan kept his voice steady. "How is it deceitful to keep my own name on a property I bought myself?" Martha gave him a look usually reserved for people who double park in handicap spots. "Because you're planning for things to go wrong. That's what dishonest people do." He blinked. Planning for possibilities isn't dishonesty. It's adulthood. Lena winced as if the word adulthood jabbed her in the ribs. Martha leaned forward like a drill sergeant. If you're truly committed to Lena, then sharing the deed is the obvious thing to do. But you refused. And now my daughter doesn't feel secure. Ethan took a long breath. This situation isn't about security. It's about pressure. And I'm not going to sign away $500,000 because you feel it's symbolic. Martha inhaled sharply. So you admit money matters more to you than my daughter? No. Ethan replied calmly. I'm saying my financial stability matters too. Lena's eyes flickered with conflict. She wasn't angry, just torn, trapped between two forces she didn't know how to navigate. Martha, on the other hand, was heating up. Let me be clear, she said. You are hurting her. You're making her question your future together. And if you think I'm going to sit here while you play games with her life, you're mistaken. Ethan almost laughed. Games? I'm the one who paid for the house. I'm the one who wants to move at a normal, reasonable pace. Martha slammed her hand against the armrest. You men are all the same. Selfish. Scared of commitment. Ethan raised a brow. Commitment means a wedding. Not adding someone to a deed like a clearance sale. Lena's voice finally cracked out, quiet but desperate. Mom, please. Stop. You're not helping. Martha whipped around. I'm protecting you. No, you're pushing, Lena whispered. Martha's jaw tightened. Sweetheart, one day you'll thank me for this. Ethan stood up slowly. Okay, enough. This isn't a three-way decision. This is between Lena and me. Martha stood up too, eyes narrowed.
Wrong.
When my daughter's future is on the line, I am involved. No, Ethan said, meeting her glare heat-in. You're interfering. Lena looked between them, terrified and fragile. Martha huffed, grabbed her purse, and forced a dramatic sigh out of her lungs. We're leaving. But Lena didn't move. She stayed rooted on the couch, eyes down, fingers twisting nervously. Come on, Martha commanded.
Now.
Still Lena didn't move. Martha's voice sharpened. Why are you still sitting there? And then softly, shakily but firmly Lena spoke. Because I'm tired. Martha paused, confused. Tired of what? Lena raised her head, tears welling in her eyes. Tired of choosing between you and my own relationship. Tired of feeling like a child. Tired of living by your approval. I can't do it anymore. Ethan's heart clenched. Because that wasn't aimed at him. It was years of pent-up exhaustion finally breaking free. Martha froze, caught completely off guard. Sweetheart, what are you saying? I'm saying I can make my own decisions, Lena said. And I want space. From all of this. From you telling me how to live. Martha recoiled as if struck. You would turn your back on your own mother? No, Lena whispered. I'm turning my back on being controlled. The statement echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Martha stared at her daughter for a long, stunned moment, then snapped her purse shut. Fine, she hissed. If that's how you feel, you know where I stand. And with that, she stormed out. The door slammed, rattling the picture frames on the wall. When silence returned, Lena collapsed onto the couch and cried, not dramatic sobbing, but a quiet, draining release, the kind that comes after holding yourself together for too long. Ethan sat beside her, unsure if he should hold her or give her space. She answered the question by leaning into him. I didn't want her to hate me, she murmured. She doesn't hate you, Ethan said softly. She's just used to being in control. Lena nodded, wiping her cheeks. It's just a lot. And she was right. This wasn't a simple conflict over a house anymore. This was about identity, independence, emotional chains, and choosing where adulthood actually begins. The next 2 days were strangely quiet. No texts from Martha. No calls. No dramatic declarations on Facebook. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, like a rubber band pulled tight. And Lena felt it, every hour. She grew more distant, not cold, but preoccupied, thoughtful, uneasy. Finally, on Thursday evening, she stood in the doorway of Ethan's study. I think I need to go talk to her, she said. Ethan nodded gently. Do you want me to come? She shook her head.
No.
I have to do this alone. He understood. He hated it, but he understood. What followed was the longest 3 hours of Ethan's life. He cleaned the kitchen twice. He vacuumed rooms that didn't need vacuuming. He opened the fridge 6 times without taking anything out. When Lena finally returned, her eyes were a storm. She set her keys down with trembling fingers. "How did it go?" Ethan asked carefully. She exhaled a shaky breath. "It went terrible. Mom said she talked to someone about my rights as a partner and suggested I could claim part of the house if things ended." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "She what?" "She's not trying to actually take anything," Lena said quickly. "She's trying to scare me. She thinks if she convinces me you're a threat, I'll leave." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "This is unbelievable." Lena looked at him, painful sincerity in her eyes. "She told me I wasn't welcome back home unless I broke up with you." Ethan's chest tightened. "She said that?" he whispered. Lena nodded. "And what did you say?" he asked. Lena swallowed, tears brimming again. "I said I wasn't choosing her expectations anymore."
But,
Ethan asked, barely breathing. She closed her eyes. "I also realized something. I can't keep fighting 2 battles at once. I'm not strong enough right now. I need space.
time.
To figure out who I am when no one is pulling strings." Ethan felt something shatter quietly inside him. "You're leaving?"
He asked.
"Not forever," she whispered.
But yes.
"I need time away from my mom. And from you. Not because of anything you did, but because I'm losing myself trying to please everyone." Ethan looked away, blinking rapidly. His throat burned. She stepped closer, voice breaking. "I love you. I still want you in my future. But I can't build that future until I know who I am without her influence and without relying on you to fight for me." He nodded slowly. Because he understood. Because she wasn't abandoning him, she was finally choosing herself. He pulled her into a long, quiet embrace. She cried into his shoulder. He held her like he was memorizing the moment. And then, she picked up a small suitcase, opened the door, and left. A gentle click. No slam. No drama. Just heartbreak. Ethan stood alone in the quiet house, the house he built, the house he protected, the house that had somehow become the center of a war no one could win. But strangely, he felt proud of her. Because for the first time, she wasn't living under someone else's shadow. And in a strangely bittersweet way, that was a victory. For both of them. The first few days after Lena left were a blur, quiet, slow, and strangely heavy. The house, once filled with a sort of chaotic warmth, now felt unnervingly organized. Too clean. Too empty. Too still. Ethan didn't realize how many tiny signs of her existence had grown used to the faint citrus scent from her shampoo lingering in the hallway, the sound of her typing late at night, the half-empty can of sparkling water she always left on the coffee table, insisting she'd finish it later. She never did. Now all of those traces were gone. Some by her choice. Some by the crushing weight of emotional necessity. He found himself pausing in doorways, expecting her to appear. He caught himself making 2 cups of coffee instead of 1. He even opened the fridge one morning and stared at a container of her favorite oat milk, unsure whether to keep it out of sentiment or throw it out to avoid breaking down before work. The house felt massive. Not in a proud look at my spacious home way, but in a this is too big for one wounded man walking around like a ghost way. Work wasn't much better. His coworkers noticed the subtle shift in him. The way he stared at his screen too long. The way he jumped when someone tapped him on the shoulder. The way he forced a smile whenever someone asked, "Everything okay at home?" He had no desire to explain that home was now just a building with good insulation and a mortgage attached. He threw himself into his tasks anyway, debugging code, attending meetings, checking analytics, pretending to be fully functioning while feeling like a drained phone battery blinking on 2 every minute. At lunch, Marcus, who clearly noticed the dead-inside expression, slid into the seat across from him. "You look like a man who just watched his emotional support animal walk out the door," Marcus said, cracking open his soda. Ethan poked his fork into a sad salad. "She needed space." Marcus nodded slowly. "And how are you handling that?" Ethan pushed the salad aside. "I'm trying to be proud of her." and also trying not to fall apart at the same time. Marcus leaned back, thoughtful. That's the thing about giving someone room to grow, they usually grow. But the weight can destroy you. Ethan smirked weakly. Thanks. Inspirational. Marcus shrugged. Look, man, I'm not going to give you Hallmark advice. But I'll tell you this, her stepping away isn't a sign that she doesn't love you. It's a sign she's trying to undo years of her mom's programming. That's not a weekend project. That's heavy, lifelong stuff. Ethan nodded. He knew that. But knowing didn't lessen the ache. That weekend, Ethan decided to clean out the garage mostly because he needed a distraction that involved heavy lifting and minimal mental energy. He found a bunch of old boxes he'd forgotten about. College notebooks. Outdated tech. A random bag of Christmas decorations he bought on clearance in July 3 years ago. And then he found the box. Their box. A cardboard container filled with things they'd saved together, movie stubs, Polaroids, love notes written on sticky pads, a dried flower from their first anniversary picnic, a postcard from the beach town where they'd accidentally locked themselves out of their Airbnb and ended up laughing about it for hours. The memories hit him like a freight train. The softness. The laughter. The tiny moments he never thought to treasure until now. He sat on the floor, leaning against the cold concrete wall, the memories swirling. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And now everything felt like a pause button had been smashed in the middle of a scene he desperately wanted to finish. 1 week turned into 2. 2 turned into 3. Lena sent small texts occasionally. I'm staying with a friend for now. It's weird, but peaceful. Therapy is harder than I expected, but I'm going.
Mom hasn't talked to me.
It hurts more than I want to admit. I'm learning to cook. I burned rice today.
Twice.
Ethan treasured every message. He never pressured her for more. Never demanded timelines. Never asked when she was coming back. He just responded when appropriate. I'm glad you're safe. I'm proud of you. Burning rice is a universal rite of passage. Take all the time you need. But at night, while scrolling through texts, he realized how painfully easy it was to confuse patience with self-torture. Meanwhile, the rumor mill in Lena's family began spinning. Not from Martha, who remained silent, but from other relatives. Lena's aunt sent her a barrage of dramatic paragraphs. Your mother is heartbroken. You ruined your relationship with her for a man who won't share a house. She raised you. She sacrificed everything. Lena forwarded it to Ethan with a single message. I'm so tired.
He typed back.
Block her.
You don't owe anyone explanations right now.
And she did. A huge step. A quiet revolution. But not everything crept along slowly. A few things arrived rapidly, uncomfortably so. One Tuesday afternoon, Ethan received a text from an unknown number. This is Martha Brooks.
We need to talk. Call me.
Ethan stared at it for a solid minute. Absolutely not. He blocked the number. Then texted Lena. Your mom contacted me. She replied instantly. I'm sorry. I didn't know she had your number. Please don't respond. He didn't plan to. The next morning, he woke up to an email. This time from a law office. The subject line read, Notice of consultation inquiry regarding cohabitation rights. Ethan nearly spit out his coffee. Was Martha actually trying to involve lawyers? He called Marcus. Dude, Marcus said, barely awake, your future ex-mother-in-law is clearly running on caffeine and delusion. She can't claim anything. Cohabitation laws in Oregon don't give her daughter squat unless she contributed financially.
Did she? No.
Did she help with the mortgage?
Also no.
Did she invest in renovations? Again, no.
Case closed.
But why is she doing this? Ethan asked. Because, Marcus said, she's losing control. And when controlling people feel powerless, they go nuclear. Ethan massaged his temples. That makes me feel so much better. That evening, Lena called for the first time since leaving. Not texted.
Called.
Her voice sounded fragile, but grounded. Ethan, my mom is spiraling. I didn't know she'd go this far. She's trying to prove you're dangerous for me. Ethan blinked. Dangerous? I'm literally the safest person you've ever dated.
I know that, she said.
But she thinks the moment she paints you as a villain, everything will snap back to how she wants. He sighed. Do you want me to talk to her? Because I want. But I'll do whatever makes you feel safe. No, Lena said quickly. Talking to her feeds it. She needs distance. A lot of it. Silence stretched. Finally, she whispered. I miss you. Ethan closed his eyes. I miss you too. But she continued. I'm still not ready. His throat tightened, but he nodded even though she couldn't see him. That's okay, he said.
Take your time.
More weeks passed. Life began reshaping itself. Ethan adopted new routines, long walks, late-night podcasts, cooking his own dinners instead of eating whatever Lena wanted. He even joined a gym, partly because the loneliness was eating him alive, and partly because lifting heavy things was cheaper than therapy. But some nights were brutal. He'd sit in the quiet living room, staring at the empty couch where she used to curl up in oversized sweaters and wonder whether he'd ever see her sitting there again. He didn't know the answer. And that uncertainty gnawed at him, like hunger. Then, after almost 2 months apart, something unexpected happened. Lena asked to meet, face-to-face, at a small coffee shop halfway between their places. Ethan arrived early, hands trembling slightly, rehearsing a dozen different possible conversations. When she walked in, he felt something in him loosen and tighten at the same time. She looked older. Not physically, but emotionally. More grounded. More sure.
Hi, she said softly.
Hey, he whispered back. They sat. Ordered drinks. And then the conversation began. I've been doing a lot of therapy, she said. And a lot of unlearning. I can see that, Ethan said gently. She nodded. I realized something huge. A pause. That I spent my whole life letting my mom decide what I wanted, who I dated, what I studied, where I lived, even what I feared. I thought it was love, but it was control disguised as love.
Ethan didn't speak.
He let her continue. And when we moved into your house, I let her voice replace my own. I let her convince me that I deserved things I didn't earn, that I should demand things I didn't even want until she said them. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Ethan. For everything. For the pressure. For the arguments. For letting her turn us into a battlefield. He shook his head.
No.
Don't apologize for her behavior. I'm apologizing for mine, she whispered. Because I wasn't fair to you. He swallowed hard. That means a lot. She wiped her eyes. I'm still not ready to come back, she said softly. But I'm ready for something else. Ethan leaned forward. What's that? She smiled a small, genuine smile he hadn't seen in months. I'm ready to rebuild us from the ground up. Slowly. Just you and me. No houses. No deeds. No mothers. Just us. Ethan exhaled, relief washing through him. That, he said, I can do. They talked for hours that day. About boundaries. About expectations. About therapy. About fears. About future possibilities, not plans. When they finally stood to leave, Lena hugged him tightly. Not out of desperation. Not out of obligation. But because she wanted to. And it felt like a beginning. A fragile one. But a beginning. Ethan walked back to his car with a strange mixture of hope and caution. The road ahead wasn't guaranteed. Nothing was certain. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't walking it alone. He wasn't walking behind her. Or ahead of her. They were walking side by side finally. Even if there were miles left to go. The weeks that followed that coffee shop reunion were like walking through a long, cautious sunrise. Nothing happened quickly, and nothing was guaranteed, but everything moved with a sort of gentle intentions, low, steady, fragile. Ethan and Lena didn't jump back into daily texting. They didn't pretend nothing had happened. They didn't sweep trauma under a rug the size of Texas. They rebuilt, quietly. A call on Thursdays. A meal together every other weekend. A long walk through a scenic park, where the trees offered more comfort than either knew how to put into words. It wasn't romance the way movies portrayed romance. It wasn't fireworks or declarations of eternal love. It was two people learning how to be whole without losing themselves or each author in the process. And slowly, truly slowly, Lena started to glow again. Her posture changed, not hesitant and apologetic, but open. Her voice changed, not timid or uncertain, but steady. Her eyes changed, not darting around for approval, but looking directly at him with clarity. It was the version of her he always believed existed beneath the layers of mother-made fear. And he wasn't the only one who noticed. One afternoon at work, Marcus peeked into Ethan's office. "Dude," he said, leaning on the doorframe. "You've been smiling at your monitor for like 20 minutes. What are you, flirting with an Excel spreadsheet?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "It's Lena. We're talking again." Marcus stepped inside, nodding. "That's good, man. You two were a mess, but a healthy mess is reparable." Ethan chuckled. "Thanks, I think." Marcus smirked. "But do no under any circumstances put her name on anything yet. If she asks you to count a parking meter, you call me first." Ethan shook his head. "She hasn't brought up the house once." Marcus paused mid-sip of his coffee. "Then maybe she's finally learning where her mom ends and she begins." Ethan didn't respond. But inside, he hoped Marcus was right. A month later, Lena invited Ethan to her tiny rental studio apartment, a place that smelled faintly like lavender candles and overcooked pasta sauce, and where the walls were still bare because she couldn't decide what kind of person she wanted to be yet. He knocked, and she opened the door, smiling nervously.
"Hi," she said. "Hi."
She stepped aside and let him in. The apartment was small, like "don't stretch too hard or you'll knock over a lamp" small, but it was hers. Entirely hers. A mattress on the floor. A thrift store table. A plant that looked like it was considering death as an option but hadn't fully committed yet. She laughed awkwardly. "It's not exactly Architectural Digest." Ethan smiled gently. "It's a start." She looked relieved. They cooked together, burning nothing this time, and sat on the floor eating spaghetti from mismatched bowls. They talked about childhood memories, random fears, dreams they'd forgotten to dream. At one point, Lena took a deep breath, her eyes shining. "I didn't realize how much of my self-ID lost until I started living here," she said quietly. "I kept waiting for my mom to tell me what to do, even when she wasn't around." Ethan listened. "And then, after a few weeks, I woke up one morning and thought, okay, what do I want?"
It was terrifying.
"But also freeing." He nodded. "I'm proud of you." She blushed slightly, looking down at her bowl. "You know," she said playfully, "most guys wouldn't patiently wait around while their girlfriend has a multi-episode identity crisis." Ethan shrugged. "Most guys aren't dating you."
She smiled at that.
A real smile. By the time early autumn rolled in, their relationship had taken on a new texture. Lighter.
Calmer.
More honest. But not everything was solved. One Saturday morning, Lena texted him. "I think I need to talk to my mom again." Ethan stared at the message for several seconds.
He typed.
"Are you sure?"
"Yeah."
"I need closure. Real closure." A meeting with Martha sounded about as safe as holding a grenade that whispered insults, but if Lena needed it, he wasn't going to stand in her way. He replied, "I'm here if you need me." She responded with a heart emoji. Simple, but meaningful. The conversation with her mother didn't happen that day, nor the next. It took Lena 2 full weeks to gain the courage. When the day finally arrived, she called Ethan beforehand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "That's normal," he said softly. "But you're not the same woman she used to control." Lena hesitated. "Can we not make this a huge deal? I just need to say what I need to say." "Of course. I'll call you afterward. Promise." And she hung up. Ethan spent the entire afternoon pretending to read, pretending to cook, pretending to exist. His stomach felt like it had taken up gymnastics. Hours crawled by. Eventually, the phone rang. He answered instantly. "Lena?" Her voice came through, exhausted.
Raw. Shaky.
"It's done," she whispered. He sat down slowly. "What happened?" She laughed, a broken, tired laugh. "Everything. Nothing." It was like talking to a wall. A wall that thinks it's a saint. He listened as she explained. Her mother dismissed therapy as brainwashing. Dismissed Lena's desire for independence as rebellious immaturity. Framed everything as ingratitude. Blamed Ethan for turning her against family. And then, when Lena refused to bend, Martha delivered the final blow. If you walk out that door, don't expect me to be waiting when you come crawling back. Lena inhaled sharply as she retold it. So I walked out, she whispered. And for the first time I didn't look back. Ethan closed his eyes. I'm proud of you. Again. Lena sniffled. I feel empty, but also lighter. That's how freedom feels at first. She went quiet for a while. Ethan? She asked. Yeah? Can I come over? His chest warmed with something soft and grateful. Of course. Always. When Lena arrived at the house that night, the house she'd once fought over, pressured him over, cried over, she stood on the porch for a long moment before knocking. When Ethan opened the door, she stepped inside slowly, cautiously, as if the walls might remember the past. But they didn't, because she wasn't the same woman who had lived there before. She walked into the living room and looked around. Her eyes softened.
Feels different, she said.
It's been quiet, he replied. She stepped closer. Do you hate me for everything that happened? He grabbed her hands, warm and soft.
No, he said.
I don't. I hated the situation. I hated how much pain you were in. But I never hated you. Her eyes filled. Ethan, she whispered, am ready. He blinked. Ready for what? To come back. He inhaled sharply. But on different terms, she continued. Not moving in immediately. Not pretending we're further along than we are. I mean, I'm ready to start building a life with you again.
Slowly.
Safely. Without my mom's interference. Without forcing anything. Ethan felt something inside him finally unlatch. Lena, he whispered, you have no idea how good it is to hear that. She stepped even closer, their foreheads almost touching. And one more thing, she said softly.
Yeah?
I don't want to be on the deed.
Not now.
Not ever, not unless we get married and mutually decide it's right. I don't want your house. I want you. And I want us to make decisions without fear or pressure. Ethan exhaled like someone who'd been holding his breath for months. I want the same, he said. And then she leaned in, and he kissed her slow, tender, patient. Not the kiss of two people clinging to each other in chaos, but the kiss of two people finally moving forward. Not as victims. Not as fighters in a war they didn't choose. But as partners rebuilding something fragile but real. Later that night, they sat on the couch, no drama, no shouting, no manipulation, and talked about the future. Not a mapped-out future. Not a pressured timeline. Just an imagined one. Road trips. Shared dinners. Therapy appointments. Healthy boundaries. A slow return to comfort. And, most importantly, a relationship built on their voices, not Martha's. For the first time, the house felt alive again. And for the first time, they both felt hopeful. Not naive, not reckless, but genuinely, cautiously hopeful. Whatever came next, they'd face it on their own terms. Together. The weeks following Lena's return marked the beginning of something neither she nor Ethan had ever experienced before, a relationship untangled from inherited expectations. For the first time since they met, the pace of their connection wasn't dictated by family drama, unspoken pressure, or fears disguised as affection. Instead, they moved forward in slow, deliberate steps, each one chosen with intention rather than urgency. It felt grown-up. Not in a boring way, but in a peaceful way. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel like he was walking on emotional eggshells, and Lena didn't feel like she was living under a microscope. Their conversations became honest without being hostile, vulnerable without being overwhelming. They agreed not to rush back into living together. Lena kept her studio apartment for the time being. Ethan kept the house exactly as it was, quiet but no longer haunted by tension. They met several times a week, always planning the next meeting rather than tumbling into old routines. They talked more about boundaries than about commitments, more about therapy breakthroughs than about home decor or relationship milestones. One crisp Saturday morning, they met for breakfast at a small diner with mismatched mugs and pancakes the size of steering wheels. Lena ordered blueberry pancakes and tea. Ethan ordered black coffee and an omelet because he had a long-standing vendetta against fruit-infused foods. Halfway through breakfast, Lena put her fork down and took a breath. I told my therapist something yesterday, she said. Ethan wiped his mouth.
Yeah?
I told her that I finally understand what I want in life. She hesitated. And that I don't want my mother involved in it. Ethan blinked, taken aback not because he doubted her, but because hearing her say it so firmly still felt surreal. That's a huge step, he said. She nodded, almost shyly. I spent years thinking independence meant being rude or distant or cold. But now I understand it just means making choices that come from me. That's exactly it, Ethan said softly. She smiled, a small but confident smile. And I want to make choices with you, not for you or against you. With you. He reached for her hand. I'd like that. Later that evening, Lena invited Ethan over to her apartment again, this time with a sense of ease instead of nervousness. Shed rearranged a few things, moved the mattress onto a basic wooden frame Shed assembled by herself, hung 2 minimalist prints on the wall, placed a new lamp in the corner that bathed the room in a warm golden glow. The apartment still looked modest, but with more personality now hers, not her mother's. As they settled into the evening, Lena brewed chamomile tea while Ethan looked through one of her sketchbooks on the table. He flipped through page after page of drawings, abstract shapes, floral patterns, portraits of strangers she observed in cafes. Then he found a sketch that made him pause. It was of the two of them, sitting on the couch, leaning against each other, watching some show he couldn't make out. The style was simple, thin lines, soft shading, but the warmth in the drawing was palpable.
That's us, he said.
Lena glanced over from the stove and blushed slightly. Yeah, I drew that a few weeks ago. I missed us, but I didn't want to draw something sad. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. It's beautiful, he said. She smiled, timid and proud.
Thanks.
They spent the rest of the night talking about things they'd been afraid to talk about before, their visions of relationships, fears about repeating old patterns, dreams that had been put on pause for too long. I want to be better, Lena said. At one point. Not for you, but for me. I want to be someone I recognize. You already are, he replied. You just needed space to hear your own voice. She took that in, eyes softening. It wasn't the kind of moment that ends with dramatic declarations or passionate kisses. It was quieter, simpler, more real. A few days later, Ethan suggested something unexpected. Do you want to start a new tradition? He asked as they walked through a quiet park at sunset. Lena raised a brow. What kind of tradition? Sunday dinners. Nothing fancy. Just a weekly ritual where we check in. Not about drama. Not about the past.
Just about us right now.
Lena considered it, then nodded. I like that. And so they began. Every Sunday evening, they cooked together, taking turns choosing the meal. One week was lasagna. Another week was tacos. The week after that, Ethan attempted homemade sushi, which resulted in rolls that looked more like sad burritos but tasted surprisingly okay. More importantly, the dinners became their baseline, something grounding, predictable, and warm. Conversations flowed naturally. Sometimes deep. Sometimes silly. Sometimes just about the weekly chaos at work. There was no pressure. No deadlines. No implicit expectations. Just two people relearning each other without the heavy shadows of past influence. But one question lingered in the air, unspoken but not unnoticed. What happens with the house? Ethan avoided the subject. Not out of fear, but out of respect. He didn't want her to feel tested or pressured or triggered. But Lena brought it up one night after dinner. I want to talk about something, she said gently. Ethan braced himself. Okay. It's about your house. He swallowed.
All right.
She set down her fork, hands folded. I need you to know, I don't want to live there right now. Not because of what happened, but because I need my own space for a while. A place that's mine, where I can keep growing without feeling like I'm moving backward. Ethan nodded slowly. That makes sense. And when the time comes, if the time comes when we're ready to live together again, I want it to be a decision based on us. Not fear. Not family influence. Not security. Just love. He felt a wave of relief, gratitude, and admiration wash over him. Lena, he said, leaning closer, that's exactly what I want too. She smiled steadily, warmly. And one day, she added, when we've grown stronger and we're ready, maybe we can talk about marriage. And whatever comes after that. But not now. Not soon. Later. When it feels real. His chest tightened not with fear, but with hope. "I'll wait," he said honestly. "You already have," she teased gently. "Then what's a little longer?" They laughed, but it wasn't the laughter of two people avoiding a topic. It was the laughter of two people who finally trusted that future conversations would happen at the right time. Over the next month, things continued to stabilize. Lena continued therapy. Ethan learned to give space without panicking. They dated again, actual dates, not rebuilding sessions. Movie nights. Walks in bookstores. Trying new food trucks. Laughing about old inside jokes. Rediscovering things they'd forgotten about each other. And slowly, a new version of their relationship formed, more honest, more mature, more collaborative. Their communication deepened too. If something bothered them, they talked about it before it became a volcano. If something triggered past fears, they acknowledged it without shame. They weren't perfect, but they were growing. And that mattered more than perfection ever could. One crisp fall morning, Ethan received an unexpected message from Lena. "Can you meet me tonight at the house?" His heart skipped.
He typed.
"Of course. Everything okay?" Her reply came a moment later.
"Yeah."
"I just want to talk about the future." At 7 that evening, she arrived at the house wearing a soft sweater and jeans, her hair loose, the porch light illuminating her in a familiar, comforting way. They sat on the living room couch, the same couch where so much tension had once lived, and Lena took a breath. "I think I'm ready for something," she said. Ethan waited. "I'm ready to start spending weekends here again." Slowly. Not moving in, but being part of this space in a healthy way. Ethan felt warmth spread through him. And she continued, "I want to start planning, not big plans, not marriage dates, not living arrangements, just planning who we want to be as partners." Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him. "I want that too." She reached for his hand. "And whatever comes later, we'll face it together. No pressure. No rushing. No mothers. Just us." He smiled. "Just us." They leaned in and kissed softly, calmly, like two people stepping into sunlight after a long winter. And for the first time, the house didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like home. Not because of a deed. Not because of ownership. But because of the two people choosing to build a future slowly, intentionally, lovingly inside it. Their story didn't end that night. It didn't rush into engagement announcements or dramatic reconciliations with the Brooks family. Instead, it continued quietly, steadily, truthfully. Because real love isn't a grand finale. It's a steady choice. Day after day. And for the first time, Ethan and Lena were choosing each other for the right reasons. No pressure. No manipulation. No fear. Just growth. And patience. And hope. And that was more than enough.